I'm an upfront person, and I'm headed for last year's number. I think we need to make severe cuts for exactly everything Dr. Littlefield said. Sequestration, taxes are going up, families are suffering, and we've got to make cuts. We're going to make them here. If we don't, they'll probably be made at the budget committee. So I think we need to take a hard look right at the beginning and see how we're going to get the budget down. And it's not a matter of arguing that. I expect Dr. Littlefield to come back with what's best for education, and I don't doubt that at all. It's the ability to pay. That's what concerns me with citizens and the challenges that they're facing to pay their taxes. I'd like to head toward last year's number. I know it's a ways to go, but I think we've got to make an effort. I think I don't think we can afford to add any positions this year. Every time we add a position, we're adding benefits, we're adding longevity. One of these is time limited, the other two are not. And I just don't think we're in a position to be able to do that. You know, some of these other costs, if we're going to be forced into them, then I think we're going to have to look other places in our budget, and we're going to have to make some choices. I just think that we owe it to the citizens to try to get this budget with as little reduction over last year as possible, and that's where I'm headed.
I think definitely the bottom line is you know, there are tough times, and myself going through our own budget process, how I more see this is that the department heads or the principals went through and decided what would be best serve the students in the community. It then went on to Dr. Littlefield, who had to make probably some tough decisions in that way and cut some things that he felt weren't maybe in the best interest of the children, but don't really make sense for an overall budget. And I see our role as also coming up with a budget that best serves the children. And then I think when it goes on to the budget committee, it's definitely in they're seeing a much bigger, broader sense. I don't think there's anything wrong with what they decide to cut, but how I approach my budget at the town is I do what I believe is going to be the best serve what I think the community, and I don't get upset when the administrator needs to make certain cuts because he's seeing a bigger picture than I am. I think it's the same role that's going on here. When it goes to the budget committee, I believe that they're the ones that we're going to probably might feel that they need to make cuts, but I think our focus more should not necessarily be on the bottom line. Try to squeeze it as much as we can and be responsible about this number when we give it to the budget committee. But I do believe that we have to stay focused on what we really believe is going to be the best, because I believe that that's what our role is. Whether it gets cut and it's voted down, at least we're showing the community that the choices we're making are in the best for the children and for the students. I don't think any of us should get upset. It probably is going to happen that it gets cut. I think that's going to be the reality of it. I think we're in tough times. But I feel that it's important that we come across and that we show that this is what we truly think is best for the children. And if we can't get there today or this year, these are probably going to be the continuing way that the focus that we're going to bring the school or the district in the future, because things could get better in the future. And I think if we stick to philosophically what we believe in is important. And I think that let the cards lay as they may, if the budget committee, as they're looking at the overall picture and how this affects the actual taxpayer, and they make their cuts, I think we have to respect that. But I think they need to respect on this side that we're just trying to make decisions that is in the best interest of the child, that we're trying to follow a philosophy to get to another point, and we may not be able to get everything we want this year, but that we're still being consistent in what we believe in going forward.
Mike, do you have anything to say? Or would you like to implement it?
Not right now, no.
Madam Chair, may I comment?
Go ahead, David, and then I'm going to speak.
You can go first if you like.
Nope, that's okay.
I would be in favor of picking a number to shoot for. I agree with what Cheryl said about the budget committee, but we've been through this last year. The budget committee handed it back to the school board and said, look, you know, you guys are more qualified, now being us, to cut this budget than the budget committee is. And, you know, I would rather sit here with all the administrators and figure out what we're gonna cut rather than arguing with the budget committee, because once we send them this budget, we have to defend it. And I think the more thought we put into this and the better we can do with it, the less chance that they're going to cut it. That's just my strategy going toward the budget committee. If we pick a number that we could shoot for, we can make some cuts, tell them, look, we made this number. You know, that may help us at the budget committee. If we just leave it up to them and say, you know, cut what you want, we went through that last year, and what ended up happening, and I'm not going to, you know, mince any words, I made the motions, we cut big chunks of money, because you're asking a budget committee that sits and reviews 10 budgets to try to get into this $27 million budget and figure out whether we're going to cut pencils or not, and they can't do that because they just don't have the time. So and then there is the issue that this is a bottom line budget, so that doesn't really matter whether you cut the pencils, because if you want the pencils, the school will buy the pencils, they'll take the money from somewhere else. So in the end, it comes down to it's a bottom line number. And, you know, how it's spent is not even going to be determined by us. It's going to be determined by the administration and the staff. So we're looking at that bottom line, and I think that's what we should, I think we should come to some number that we're going to try to go toward.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
In last year, in my defense, it was my first year on, and I really didn't even have any experience with budgets in general. And I really felt like I got lost in that whole process. And this year, I feel like I'm coming better prepared. And although I get what you're saying, I think, you know, it is up to us. I'm not saying that I think they should go ahead and cut whatever they want. But I just wanted to, as much as I really don't want to focus on just a number, but really focus on which one of these things here really best serves our students, rather than just saying we're coming up with a number, that's a number we're going to get to, and we're just going to go ahead and try and cut things. I think our focus, what I was trying to get across was, I think in the process of either reducing the number or keeping the number the same, whatever the board wishes to do, is that the focus is more on what each of these increases or decreases are all about, and if it best serves the students. And I think that that was really more what my point is rather than just a raw number, really going through what these increases mean so that we could defend it if we had to, if we really do feel strongly that these are important items when we go to the budget committee.
Mike, go ahead. I'm deferring.
Okay, well, I agree with that, what Cheryl said. I think we should, our role as a school board should be to see what the students and the administration and the schools need to have the best for our students that we can have, but to make sure that we need those things. And it's not something that's extra that's not really needed, or maybe to identify those things. If we can, we'd like to have this. But I think we should go at it not looking at the bottom line to start for us, and looking at what we need in the budget to do the best service that we can to our students. And then at that point, see if, oh, that's way too high, then, you know, we might have to see what is really not as important. But I don't think we should start with the bottom line. I think we should start with what students need, in my opinion.
Is there anybody else before I start? I think having been, this being my second budget process that I'm going through, I think one of the things we need to make sure when we meet with the budget committee we do really well is sell them on why we think what we're adding is important. I don't think that the average person, budget committee members, some school board members, people in general, realize the shift that is going to happen in education from Common Core standards, from GLEs. I am very involved in schools. I'm now in school, and it is overwhelming that you're going to change how you teach a kid, and you're going to expect them to take the Smarter Balance test, that the government expects us to fund computers. We need, the teachers are already have full plates. They're very busy. They're juggling a plethora of things going on in the room every day. We need to help them, so we need to be able to tell the budget committee why a Common Core teacher facilitator is an essential part of teaching our kids. Because if we don't do a better job, or if we don't do the very best job we can, the kids are going to fall behind. And yes, tough economic times. It's hard for everybody. I get that. I live it every day. But at the end of the day, the only thing you give your kid is an education. And we can't go and cut $575,000 out of special ed. Those kids need that. And it's important to look at your bottom line, but it is also very, very important that everybody gets that's the most important thing. We can live without a fire truck, and we can live without a police car. We have brand new police cars, but we make a principal in our school district juggle teachers and not give every kid the best social studies teacher they can have. Our priorities are not correct if that's what we do. And we, as the school board and the school administration team, need to get that message very clearly through. When you look at a budget and you just cut off the bottom, that does not help educate the children that live in our school district. I'm sorry, I got emotional.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd just like to make it clear, I'm not proposing that we cut special ed, but I think we need to get this down to a reasonable number. As far as the Common Core implementation, you know, the public is frustrated, as we are, with these costs that are shifted down, but I mean, it doesn't change their ability to pay for them or not. So we've got to look for some other ways to do this. We cannot just ask the public to fund all of this. With education in itself is not produced any type of evolving curriculum. Here we go again. We're going to buy another one, you know, and that's the history. I'm not just saying Hooksett, that's the way education works. And it's not efficient. And, you know, so if we're just going to take everything that's handed down to us and hand it to the public, I don't blame them for saying no. So we've got to put the brakes on. You know, if we send this to the budget committee and we've done some work on it, you know, I think we're going to have a better chance than if we just send it the way it is and we don't do anything. And I just want to be clear here, because I did spend time on the budget committee last year and I motioned to cut this budget severely, but I just want everyone to know that once this budget comes out of the school board, I will vigorously support it to the budget committee based on the will of the board. So my statements here will end when this budget is voted on, and that number that's voted on by this board, I will support and defend to the budget committee. So I just want to be clear that I'm not going to, you know, try to side with anybody but this board once we have a final budget. So I have stated my view is that I'd like to pick a number that we go to and go on the bottom line. It doesn't seem to be the will of the board, so I'll let you guys decide how you want to proceed.
Go ahead.
I don't believe that we should just take this and then go to the budget committee with this. I see more going through each one of these large cost centers that Dr. Littlefield described, and I would really like to get into why, what about, what else can we do? Can you offer us anything else that how you can change this? You know, because this just isn't going to work. We do need to get it smaller, but I'm just more, don't want to say I want to push one number. I want to get it down to this number. I think it would be more effective if we can have an understanding of each of these large cost centers and really pressure the administration to see what they can do about making that smaller. That's how I see this process going. And then this way, I would be a lot more comfortable when it does get presented to the budget committee, that I can support it and that I can actually defend it as well.
I do know that last year, when we had our all-day budget meeting and we took our budget and went with our principal, that when I met with Drew, who I had the Underhill budget, there was a proposal to add a teacher, and we ended up working it out before we got to everybody, that of a couple different scenarios between him and I, that ended up being not the addition of a teacher, it ended up the shifting of a teacher. So maybe if we each took our book with our principal or whoever's books we have and went through them, they may be able to shed some light on some of the numbers and explain the philosophies to us as to why their number is what their number is. And we may find some areas in that can help us reduce the number to some extent.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Well, I'd just like to comment that Mrs. Atkins said that, you don't want to push the budget on the way it is. It's got to go down. So I guess what we need to think about is how much does it need to go down? Because I can assure you that Dr. Littlefield's done a good job and all these administrators have done a good job, and I'm sure that all these things in here are educationally beneficial to the students. I'm not going to argue that at all. In the bottom line, Dr. Littlefield administration is going to shift that cost to where they need it. They're going to ask us to approve it, and we will. I mean, I think we've approved every budget adjustment that's been sent to us because we trust their judgment of where that money has to go at the time that they need it. So, I'm just saying, if we think this number is too high based on the criteria that we've talked about with the economy and taxes and all of that, I think it would be beneficial to us to try to figure out how too high do we think it is before we start going into some of these things. And that's just a suggestion because I've run the gambit from being on the budget committee, and there was the famous frog food debate that I got into, and you can get down in the weeds and talk about every little thing, but in the end result, it's a bottom line budget, and it's going to be shifted. So if we think it's high, I guess my question is, how high is it? And if we can answer that, maybe we've got some type of a target that we're headed for. If that's not the will of the board, well, we won't do that. Thank you.
Cheryl, last year, was it beneficial to you to sit with your building administrator and go through and look at some of the areas that could be cut? When you're speaking one-on-one with, I happen to have Ray Gagnon's budget and Drew Barstow's budget.
To be honest with you, last year I didn't know what to expect or even know what questions to ask. This year I feel better prepared. I think that it's a two-part thing. I think there's a lot I could learn from, I have the special ed book about the numbers that are going on there. I actually, when I saw right away that was a very large portion of this budget and that's being affected. So I really wanted to have a real clear understanding as to why, how much is that contractual, what, is there anything in there that needs to be looked at, because I'm not familiar with it. But I also, after hearing Dr. Littlefield's overview, I have a lot of questions and want to ask, on the technology side and for the Smart Balance test, what do you mean by that you need more technology? Really, you really can't use those computers that are in that classroom for those teachers? And, because maybe this isn't the year to do this. Maybe we can push that out, because I don't know, when are those kids going to start taking those tests? Is it going to be in September? Is it going to be the end of June? We would love to have centers where these kids don't have to share anything, but this may not be the time right now. So I really like the process. I think we still need to do both and ask these questions. And
now, I'm sorry if I'm supposed to know this, is the technology a book somebody has, or is it part of each school?
It's part of the Colley budget.
Okay. So Matt would go with, you have Colley?
Yes.
So Matt would go with Mike, and Matt would go with Mike, and they could work that out and then come back with an explanation to us of these questions.
Yeah,
Is
and
that correct?
I'd just like to chime in that I don't support that whole method, because I'd rather have those discussions right here. But if that's the way you choose to do it, I'd never like the book breakout deal, but, you know, it's up to the board. I just think if these are big issues, let's bring them out on the table and talk about them right now and find out. But I just think that it gets us too compartmentalized about talking about things where we really need to put it on the table. I don't know, but that's just my view, and it's up to the will of the board.
Well, I think if the people who wrote the budget can give a quick overview, and we could do that. I mean, I would like to hear some of the other ones too, instead of just.
Well, I think,
But especially of where increases happen, or why this is in there, or that type of thing, if they could give a quick thing like that. I mean, I don't know, it just might drag on if everyone gives a 20-minute presentation and of their budget. I don't think.
Well, it really wasn't, how it was handled last year, and maybe that wasn't explained, I was a couple minutes late, was each building administrator or department budget that you have, the 2 to 3 people went and sat at a table and discussed the budget. They went over it. If you specifically had questions about your budget, you asked it, and then there was a presentation. It was short, 10-minute. Most schools were 10 minutes. Drew's was a little longer because there was an addition of a teacher in his. And we discussed it, and some of the things were worked out. Like, the question you had, we answered because I had the same question. Because, I don't know if that makes sense.
We have to break up if, I mean, if I could see if I was totally familiar with this book. I just got it from Dave 2 minutes ago because I had the wrong book, but even if I had that book, I mean, I'm not familiar enough, I think, with it to sit down with someone and you know, ask the right questions. If they set it out here, we have 5 of us listening to that reasoning, and then we say, I don't know, I just thought, I think it'd be quicker, more expedient if someone just gave a quick thing about their budget for all of us, we could listen and ask questions, but I don't know, maybe it takes longer, I'm not sure, so do whatever you tell me to do.
I think going around and hearing each one, and then if we, then